Good evening. Infosys is now under attack from a journal that is affiliated to the Sangh Parivar. In an intriguing set of developments, the RSS is distancing itself from an article in the Panchjanya that has personally targeted the Infosys group. Let's bring up our big story on the program this evening. Infosys is with anti-national forces. There's a conspiracy to destabilize India's economy. So says an article in the Panchjanya, a journal that was once edited by Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Its editor has continued to defend this piece, which argues that there's a conspiracy behind the glitches on the income tax portal that is managed by Infosys. Why does the journal see a conspiracy, and why has the group been personally targeted? RSS leaders are distancing themselves from the publication. Sunil Ambekar saying that Infosys has made a seminal contribution to India and to India's economic growth. But the editor of the journal is in fact standing by the piece. What do we make of this attack on Infosys? Can the Sangh Parivar really disassociate itself from the Panchjanya article? Is there something more going on here that we do not fully understand? That's a big focus on the program today. Let's bring up our panel of experts today. We're joined on the program by Sandip Ghose, columnist and commentator, Sucheta Dalal, easily one of our best known and respected business editors and journalists. We're joined by Mohandas, who has been among the early Infosys leaders to call out this article and object to the slurs in it. We're joined by Madhavan Narayanan, who's also a veteran journalist, as well as Govind Ethiraj, again, one of our best known business journalists. So a great panel. I'll start with you, Mohan, if I may. And, the last time I said you're a supporter of this government, you said that you did not agree with that characterization. You said that you like to cooperate with all governments. But I'll still say that as someone who has often supported this government, did you feel hurt when you found that a company that has really been your baby, along with the baby of others, came under the kind of attack it did in the Panchjanya?
Well, Barkha, I've not been hurt as much as I've been angry at this stupidity. Because remember, Barkha, this government has done much more for business than any other government in the past. I've been through 40 years of seeing governments at work, and this is my personal opinion. I can give you data. And to have this stupid article by demented minds to say that Infosys is anti-national, fomenting society, fomenting things in society and all kind of rubbish is unbelievable that anybody can make such silly statements. So I'm angry that they make the statement. I'm angry that they abuse Infosys. And I gave it back to them by talking to the media and giving my part of it. I'm happy that somebody from the RSS has officially disassociated themselves. The government is not behind it. The government will never do this. Because, the government has done such a lot. Now, we could always comment against the government, do whatever it is. But, there seem to be some people in the Parivar who seems to say that people should not spend their money to support causes that they like. Now, we are a free country, and they characterize those people as anti-national. You are anti-national to them. I'm sure Sucheta will be anti-national. All of us will be anti-national to them. And they seem to carry on their tirade despite their Parivar being in government. I think they're not changed the rhetoric. If you're in the opposition, you have to abuse somebody, that is fine. You abuse a political opponent, that is fine. They do it all the time. You abuse media sometimes, that is fine. Media can give it back. But you abuse companies and all that, they're so ridiculous, so absurd. So I have to give it back to them. It is not, I don't believe it is part of the government, it's part of something. And this editor standing by this report without any evidence, without any data, and I'll explain the project to you and the complexity later. But I think it's plainly absurd. So I'm more angry than hurt. I mean, you can't be hurt with people you don't respect, right?
That's well said, but does it bring home the danger of how loosely this phrase anti-national is used, Mohan? I think that's what this story is really about, that you disagree with something, you don't like something, you don't agree with how it's managed, and immediately a fellow citizen is an anti-national. Does it, at least for you, bring home that lesson or that there's something we all need to learn?
Well, Barkha, let me put it in a context, Barkha. When the left was in power, they used to call us, capitalistic lackeys and all kind of abusive terms, right? Now these people are in power. Some of their affiliates use anti-national to broad brush everybody. So we got to take it in the context and ignore them. Look, whether I'm a national or anti-national is not for somebody to certify. We're all grown-up people, right? We do a bit for our country. We can give it back. They use the term, pejorative terms for everybody to blacken people they don't like. That's the way. The left did it in a different way. These are doing different way. It's fine. We just have to put them in the place. That's all. I'm not getting hurt. I'm just angry that the targeted Infosys, which is a business and a company which has done so much. You can criticize Infosys for the goof-ups in the tax portal. You should criticize them. They're not doing a good job. They're not a short job. You must be critical. You must hold them to account. All that is fine. But why abuse them and use this kind of terms? It makes no sense.
That's well said. But Sucheta, when you hear Mohandas Pai saying, I'm angry, and this has happened to a group of people who have actually been very, very supportive of the government, of many leaders of the BJP. Nandan Nilekani, despite having in the past contested on a Congress ticket, has worked, with the government. Murthy has been an open, supporter quite often. Mohandas has been someone who has lauded the government multiple times, and this is happening to them or to the company that they created and built. What do you make of it, Sucheta Dalal?
See, Barkha, I think that it's a free-for-all, okay? I don't see why a corporate should not be criticized, but I as a journalist can be criticized, okay? I'm a business journalist. I've been writing for 35 years. I have questioned every government that's been in power, whether it's a BJP, it's a UP or any coalition. The minute you criticize this particular government, you are branded anti-national. They haven't yet called me part of the tukde-tukde gang, but the words are identical. And I don't see why we should all be upset when a corporate is, called the same names, while it's, a free ride for individuals to be abused when we are just doing our job. So I don't buy that. I agree with Mohan that you have to look at what Infosys has done. This is not the first time there's been a serious glitch. This time, the kind of people who are affected is all of us taxpayers, as well as the CAs who form a big part of their support group. So I think their core group is affected. You have 15th September coming up. It's got time till 13th. You have to pay advance taxes on the 15th. Nobody knows whether the portal is working any better or it's going to be flawless at that time. Why are there no changes? And why is it that it is okay to abuse individuals, target them, have an IT cell, go after anybody who criticizes? You have been attacked. I've been attacked. We know how it is. Why should it be any different? Why
so let's separate the portal and the problems with the portal with the way Infosys has been attacked, Sucheta. What do you make of the attack per se?
I think it's ridiculous. Just as they call, just as it is ridiculous to attack individuals, it is ridiculous to attack Infosys. Infosys is more directly targeted, but when the Tata Group was targeted, it's been done in multiple ways. It's not just what Piyush Goyal said without explaining what exactly was he ranting about. Piyush Goyal ranting has not happened once, it's happened several times without any explanation of what is the issue. They also go after Tata Trusts. Because they have an issue with Tata Trusts, every NGO is going through hell. Okay, finally, after all these years, they have not managed to make a case against Tata Trust, which is unique and different from any other NGO which gets foreign funding. But every NGO has been literally brought to a standstill. So this is how people have been operating. Unfortunately, Mohan, I'm sorry to say this, you support everything else that happens. You've never come out in support. I mean, you've not ever taken note of the anguish that we feel when it comes to NGOs being targeted, when it's individuals being targeted. This is the first time that you're out there getting upset.
No. Sucheta, let me say, look at the number of articles I've written about tax terrorism. I'm one of the few people in the country who are constantly, right from 7 years, written about tax
I'm talking about attacking people directly. Not tax terrorism. We'll debate all that separately.
Sucheta, I've spoken about tax terrorism, written multiple articles which not many have done in this country. They're all scared of the taxman. We have been scared of the taxman for the last 25 years.
But I think her question, Mohan, is that, even in the beginning you said journalists can be attacked because they can defend themselves. Surely Infi has more clout to defend itself than Sucheta and I do.
No, you can't. See, they're all businesses. They're not in politics. They're not in public life. They're in business.
And we're reporters. We are solo actors. We don't even have organizational
I'm
muscle.
sorry. Another
you are
point,
media.
Barkha, is that every business house today has got a digital marketing team which goes after people with false narratives. They are taking the template from the government IT cell or political IT cells. Business houses are doing the same thing. Maybe Infosys hasn't got smart
Okay.
enough to do it, but the best business houses are doing this.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Mohan, quick response. Does it make you reflect a little more on how these attacks can be so organized? I think it's a kind of come home message, on how nobody is really insulated from them.
Barkha, we live in a very different world with the advent of social media and a lot of things. If you're on social media, you attack for everything. For example, when I spoke about the Swindle Prize, you thought I attacked you. I'm not attacked you. I'm expressing an opinion, something. I respect you for what you are. I'll always respect you because you've been a lone defender. I respect Sucheta. I've known her for so many years. She and I differ on something, sometimes vehemently on social media. It doesn't mean we respect each other. We differ. Now, this is the way I would look at it. So I will not get very worried. I will go back at them and tell them you're ridiculous. You are a joke. This should not be done. And give a very hard push and leave it at that. Is it some conspiracy to defame Infosys, defame business continuously? I don't think so. Some people think so, but I don't think so.
Okay, I want to bring in Madhavan and the others now. Madhavan, Panchjanya was edited by Atal Bihari Vajpayee. It is interesting that the RSS has distanced itself, but the magazine is very much part of the larger Sangh Parivar. Its editor is followed by the Prime Minister on Twitter, and its editor has felt emboldened enough to stand by the piece. The editor could have alternatively taken the view that this is the personal opinion of a columnist and I don't defend it. In fact, the editor has said, let Infosys make its case in response. Let there be greater evidence, let there be greater investigation. And the piece is obviously ridiculous. Madhavan, go ahead.
Very simply, I think there are two ways of looking at this. I think my friend Mohandas Pai and Sucheta Dalal have, said it so beautifully. I'm happy to see myself agreeing with Mohandas, which is not very often, I must say. But the key point to note is the editor of Panchjanya is standing by his story. But the question is whether we should call it a story at all. It is just a baseless, slanderous, what Shashi Tharoor would have called a farrago of whatever. But the sense of it is that it's not based on facts. And Infosys, I have spent 5 years in Bangalore covering Infosys for Reuters, the world's biggest news agency, at close quarters. I've covered its listing on the NASDAQ in 1999, when it became the jewel in the Indian corporate crown. And therefore, to call it anti-national without factual basis at a time when the promoters, who are not even in control of the company because they are minority shareholders now, this is something Panchjanya seems to have completely forgotten. So therefore, they are just making wild allegations. And if you know how IT companies work in terms of having hundreds and thousands of workers following processes, this kind of allegation just cannot be made. I'm looking at it as a technology journalist, as a political journalist, and a business journalist, all three of which I have been in my long career. So it doesn't wash in anything. The only thing I might like to add is a conspiracy theory. Like the Soviet Communist Party, the Sangh Parivar has daggers out inside. So, kahin pe nigahein, kahin pe nishana, as they say in Hindi.
So what is the nishana?
Nishana could be the finance minister herself, because there are daggers out for Miss Nirmala Sitharaman within the Sangh Parivar. They envy the fact that she has Modi's ears. They envy the fact that a woman has made it so big and doing a reasonably competent job considering the experience and portfolio. I'm sorry to say this. This is the one time to defend Nirmala on a different plane altogether.
Okay, hang on. You've thrown a new element to the mix. Let's not forget that Ms. Sitharaman herself very publicly tweeted Nandan Nilekani objecting about the way the portal was being managed, saying, I hope Infosys and Nandan Nilekani will not let down our taxpayers. But that's a separate debate. And I do want to separate the two parts of this conversation, and I just want to bring in Govind and Sandip very quickly, and then we'll go back to Mohan and Sucheta. Govind, go ahead. You've been covering corporates for decades. Have you ever seen anything like this? And should Infosys just ignore it? Should Infosys sue? do you just shrug your shoulders, move on? Mohan has given it back, and does life move on after that, or is there more to it than meets the eye? Can't hear you, Govind. We can't hear you.
I think
Can't hear
Infosys
you.
may have,
Yeah.
Infosys may have no choice but to move on given everything else. I think it's a funny, it's a funny contextualization. So we say that Infosys has contributed a lot to the country, so therefore they're not anti-national. So if it's a company which is, let's say, 100 crores and is not seen to have contributed a lot to this country, then they could be anti-national. So, the binary is not very clear to me. And I think once you go down that path, you're drawing such fine distinctions that it becomes quite bizarre. So, I mean, there is no doubt that Infosys is a good company, and we've all, as Madhavan said, covered it and reported on it, and indeed celebrated with its successes, whether in the Indian as a listed company in India, or for that matter even globally. I think there are a couple of things that people, particularly those who write these articles, should remember. Companies are not individuals. While here it's an unusual case of a company and an individual being treated similarly, but companies are not individuals. Companies produce goods and sell them where they can make a profit. I mean, an Indian company might be manufacturing and selling overseas, and global multinationals sell in India. I mean, some of the best performing stocks on the Bombay Stock Exchange now are foreign companies. I mean, it could be Nestle, it could be Hindustan Unilever. I mean, these are not anti-national, but they are non-Indian companies. And similarly, there are Indian companies, including Tatas and Infosys, who do well overseas. That's the nature of business, and that's the way things are in this globalized world. So I think that's something to think about. First. Second is that mistakes do happen. I think there is a bit of an information vacuum here as to who has done what, but I can tell you that you try and Barkha and whoever else wants to try and set up a good news website in 1 month's time, and you'll know what the problems are. Let's forget about income tax and GST and passport and all that, which are Herculean projects. Herculean. Set up a website, a news website in 1 month, and you'll know where things can go wrong and why it will not happen in 1 month. So I think these are complex issues. So I'm not qualified only because I don't know what's going on. So I could easily blame Infosys, I could blame the government of India, but I don't think it would be fair without.
But I think the important point that you make is that for Sunil Ambekar to say that it's made a seminal contribution and therefore it should not be called anti-national. What does that say for a startup, for example, that is just starting out? And that's an important point. Sandip, jump right in, right? Separate the portal.
Madhavan got his finger up.
Yeah. Okay, one finger interjection by Madhavan, and then Sandip.
Yeah. I want to absolutely separate out the competence issues that Govindraj spoke about from the issues of conspiracy and willful targeting and abusing, which have no factual basis whatsoever. So let's be very clear on these two. Okay.
Okay. So, Sandip, to Madhavan's conspiracy theory, since it's the season for conspiracy theories, that this is actually the targeting of Ms. Sitaraman herself. Do you buy that? Because I just find, again, it intriguing that Panchjanya did not disassociate from the article. It could have.
Barkha, I am not one to get into conspiracy theories. There is one conspiracy theory about Panchjanya and another conspiracy theory which Madhavan is floating. If we get into that, there is no end to conspiracy theories. I can give you a third conspiracy theory, which Sucheta has gone out of.
She'll be back. She'll be back. I'm sure she'll reconnect. Yeah.
I have had top corporate honchos who are very critical of the government in Bombay. When I tell them, why has Nandan Nilekani been supporting so many things of the government, including demonetization in some ways because of digitization, etc., they said, you know what? Why is he doing it? He's doing it because Infosys is getting so many contracts from the government. So there are various conspiracy theories. Let's not get into it. And if we want to talk of Parivar, let's add, I think this government gets hugely wrongly treated for not allowing dissent. And using the word literally Parivar, we have a very senior minister in the cabinet whose spouse is constantly criticizing the government in public domain, everything. But at that stage, nobody says, why is a Parivar person criticizing such an important person in the government? But the government allows it. Now, there may be reasons for it, and there are various other people who do it. So let's not again get into why Panchjanya has done it, and if Panchjanya has done it, whether there is some other agenda involved. You could get some other agenda involved also of the Parivar actual family member who's doing
I know, but what's the message is sending?
criticism. So I don't think that. But
What's the
my
message
worry
is
is,
sending out to business
you can
houses?
take any message, Barkha, but the point where I have a problem is by deflecting the issues to these conspiracy theories, if you are moving away from the actual fiasco which has happened in the not just in this implementation, before this a GST implementation, and there are Infosys records, with due respect to Mohan, in India, in the domestic market has not been good. Before that, I have friends in Bangalore who complain about the BS billing system implementation over there. I know for a fact, Mohan, I was not too long ago at the other end. I know firsthand of people who have dropped Infosys from the consideration set, given their experience of user experience on GST. Infosys has been trying to make a strong bid into the domestic market, as you would know better than me. They've realized that they need to expand in a domestic market. And I know of cases where I have personally been involved when they.
So are you saying the performance is where the conversation should be, and it doesn't matter what Panchjanya said?
No. That is different. You must distinguish, and there is a very serious issue. And my worry is, by deflecting the issues to this Panchjanya article and saying that what is the agenda, etc., you are moving away from the real issue. Govind's previous newspaper, Economic Times, has carried a very, very comprehensive and detailed article on the project management. Okay.
Yeah, but I think we all agree. I think we all agree.
No, there is a point. And in that project management, before I'm misunderstood or misquoted, let me add, in any project, there is equal responsibility of the client and the consultant. Okay. And as they say in anything, whether you go for advertising or anything, you get out of the consultant or the service provider or vendor what you can get out. If you are incompetent at the client's end, the client interface is bad, you will land up with...
Let me begin.
Let me complete one more second. But despite that, if a service provider, it goes with the territory, I could be a very incompetent company asking Infosys to implement something as simple as SAP. If I am not able to handle it, I will get a junk system. That is done. But at the end of the day, Infosys will still get a bad name.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying, and I think that's what Govind was trying to say, that you can't, maybe the deadlines that were implausible, the timelines were implausible, but that's just one part of it. The fact is that when you have, a giant like Infosys, and I take Sucheta's point, why should we feel, hang on Sandip, let me move on, let me get in Mohan. I take Sucheta's point that the giant is not more immune than the individuals, the rest of us are, but yet, there's this whole big India story that the government constantly wants to sell. There's a constant emphasis on the Atmanirbhar India, and then an Indian success story is treated like this. There is an irony there. But Mohan, talk to Sandeep's point that this is a deflection from the actual competence issues.
No, I think there are two issues. The competence issue does not go away. I don't think it's as much competence as bad management, both sides. Let me explain the point of view I think is important to us. It is a very, very complex project. It is not a simple project. Okay, there are many, many moving parts. And if to do this, you need competence on both sides, like Sanjay said. The department people are changed multiple times. They are not tested properly. They have accepted it. Today, I was talking to somebody and they told me clearly the department does not have the competence to test out the software and accept it. Yes, they accepted it. I don't want to blame the department. I don't want to blame anybody. And I'm on record to say that they should have gone to the Institute of Chartered Accountants, got 100 of the brightest people to be part of the testing team as a public service and done all that. It was prematurely pushed into the market when it was not ready. All the forms were not there. The problem is, Barkha, there has been no transparency in the way it has been handled. There has been no change management, no transparency. They have not put out data, what is working, what is not working, when are they doing it. We're not seeing any data. There's been a tremendous improvement in the last 2.5 months. I asked them to have the data. I told the government to put the data. They tell me that the data will be out. The data is out. 95% of the problems are solved. There's still some problems which will take a little bit of time to solve because the forms are not designed. The GUI was not
whose fault is that? Whose fault, if any, is it according to you, Mohan?
It is a fault of both sides, and Infosys must take the greater responsibility because they've been doing the IT software for the last 15 years. They should have managed it better. They should have spoken back to the government, pushed the government back and said, look, it is not yet ready, it's not fully tested, do this, that. And there's a failure on the part for not doing that. Because the government, we know what the government is, Barkha. The government is not going to improve in any big project. They'll always blame the vendor. We know the government. So we have to be extra cautious to do that. I think that is where the fault lies. And lack of transparency, lack of communication, lack of change management, that is the big issue.
Okay, let me bring in Sucheta and the others now. Sucheta, go ahead. Sandip's point is that Sandip is arguing this from the other side, that actually by focusing too much on the kind of slurs against Infosys, the real issue is lost. Then the conspiracy theory might well be that it suits everybody to have this little kerfuffle.
So I agree with Sandip, and I think that Panchjanya has written this article because it affects so many people, and they have seen that nothing has happened. Okay, so if you ask for a conspiracy, the conspiracy is only in this, that it is actually pinching a lot of people, and that's why it's made it to the RSS journal. Otherwise, things like the National Stock Exchange and scams there don't ever figure anywhere. What happens in business does not figure in an RSS mouthpiece. Okay. So what happened now? The point about Infosys is that, as Sandip says, and as Mohandas Pai says, it has to take the greater responsibility. The key reason being, this is not a newspaper portal on a small budget. I'm sorry, I disagree with Govind Ethiraj. This is a 4,000 crore project. This is a project they have taken up after they did badly in MCA 21. I handled that very, very closely, spoke to the Secretary Consumer Affairs, spoke to Mr. Narayanan Murthy. I have followed it very, very closely. TCS was not doing a bad job when Infosys came in and botched up MCA 21. After that, they botched up the GST portal. Frankly, they should not even have been given the tax portal. Okay, they should have been blacklisted. Now, having these two bad experiences and to come up with this nonsense about the passport portal, we have looked at it very closely. TCS came to our office. We made a presentation on passport. We've seen how they have fixed all the loopholes. They were listening to even people like us, a tiny NGO, forget about the government. Okay, so in the tax portal, Infosys has plenty of experience of knowing that government is a bunch of dumb bureaucrats who don't understand. They should have said, let's go for a pilot. They should have said, this actually is rolling out to a lot of individuals who have to file tax returns. It's a path-breaking thing. Let's not make the mistakes that we made in the past. Why didn't they open their mouth and say it?
Okay,
And
I think Mohan's wanting a brief interjection, and then Govind. Mohan?
On technology projects, easy to pass judgment. Let me give you a piece of data. In the first month of the GST portal, 56 lakh filers filed the returns on time. 56 lakh filers. It is not funny. 82 lakh filers got registered in the first month. So it's not funny. If the portal was bad, 56 lakh wouldn't have filed in the first month and paid those taxes. Let's get it right. There are many issues. The problem is, Infi is not coming with the story and putting out its story. What happened, why it happened, etc. They're not communicating. There is no change management. There is a problem. There is a problem. I think the problem is, they're being forced to go live but much faster. Remember when Jaitley took the rates out, when were the rates given for GST? Just about 15-30 days back. Please remember that, how quickly it was put into being. But 56 lakh filed on the first day, on the first month.
I think Sucheta is going to respond,
but Mohan, just 1 minute. Mohan,
okay.
You've been in the IT space. You also know that any IT project has a clear timing deadline and milestones. So it is not with a flexi milestone you do an IT project. So when you're saying they've been forced, if somebody has taken a project to deliver within 2 months, if a project was taken to deliver within 6th July, they should have either not taken it or flagged the issue. No IT project is given that we will implement whenever able.
Okay. Can I let Govind come in? Govind, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's an element of reality here. I mean, the thing is, projects don't work like that. I mean, no large infrastructure project, which is why I was trying to contrast it with a news website. I mean, the idea is not that, this has the complexity of that, or that has the complexity of this one. It's just that these are very large government projects, and these take time. And everywhere in the world, this is not just in India, in the most developed countries, they run into glitches when things happen, because they're suddenly exposed to such large scale of inputs and so on. So this is not to defend Infosys, this is not to attack the government or vice versa. I'm just saying that things go wrong, and it's usually not a particular person's fault. And I think it's very difficult, just practically speaking, to commit to such tight deadlines. You can commit to a deadline, you should commit to a deadline, and that's how you get a project. But somehow these things never work out in the way we want them to. So I think
So,
that's something.
so Govind, what do you think has happened here? Do you think they've been pushed into a deadline that they were not in a position to say no to the government on?
I don't know. I mean, obviously they should. I mean, they should not have committed to a deadline which they were not confident about. So maybe they did it to win the contract. Maybe they were up against other bids which looked like they would unseat them. So maybe they shouldn't have taken it at all. I mean, what's the big deal in?
Govind is no different
like
from
this?
any other project like building a bridge or an infrastructure. If you are not delivering on time, you get so many points less next time somebody gives you a project.
Or you have to say it can't be done within this period of time. Now we don't know exactly what's happening. Sucheta, I'm coming to you in a second. Madhavan's been waiting. Madhavan, go ahead.
One very important point, Barkha, which is to say, let's not lose focus of the fact. I completely agree with Sandip and Sucheta and Mohandas Pai. The point is, why can't the Panchjanya interview these people instead of making slanderous claims? That is the core issue. But
Exactly.
the last time I heard, you were not running a business channel. We are discussing some of the socio-political issues here. I take Sucheta's point about RSS being upset over small businesses being this thing in a good faith. It's a very good point. But the point is, there is still a competent way of doing it. And why is the editor still standing by his story? This is like, ek to chori us par sina jori, as they say. You're actually thumping your chest after a completely baseless story. So the kind of criticism leveled by Mohandas Pai and Sucheta are the most valid ones. That is what we should focus on.
I know, and I think that's the point. I think that's the point that, the Panchjanya could have reached out to Mohandas Pai for a comment. They could have reached out to other people for a comment. Where were all those voices, right, Madhavan?
Yes, exactly.
And that's why I.
Barkha, journalists don't always do that.
No,
okay?
come on.
There are many other portals.
Sandip, hang on. Sandip, in that case, hang on, let me speak. In that case, the editor of the journal would have said this was an opinion piece. The editor did not say that. The editor could have said this is an opinion piece. We don't control the opinions. Opinion columnists have a free sort of access. But he said Panchjanya stands firm with its report. If Infosys has objections, it should present its side. Come on, what's the side in calling someone anti-national?
No, that's fine. But that's between, I think Panchjanya is I heard of it for the first time. I'm sorry, though you call me
How can it be, yaar? Come on, Vajpayee used to edit this.
Vajpayee editing doesn't mean that, Vajpayee, we can say who used to edit Hindustan Times and who used to edit Times of India. And therefore, they are not necessarily the same papers today.
Okay,
so Vajpayee editing doesn't mean a thing. Okay?
I think, okay. Madhavan.
Let me put it in context. India is in spite of all the problems, we are still the world's fastest growing major economy as a secular economy looking at a 3 to 5 year perspective. When an organization affiliated to the ruling party, which promises everything about India being a golden story, talks like this, I'm sorry, I know people in Wall Street and London City who would be looking at it there are very risk analysts sitting out there in Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley who will take this very seriously. I assure you.
Okay, Sandip,
Madhavan, since you have covered these things, I think Infosys should be much more worried about the delivery and the questions which will be asked about that than what a Panchjanya
Can I please let the others speak now? Sandip,
I think this became a prestige issue. This became a prestige issue for both Infosys and government to lean on each other. It's a prestigious project for Infosys. It's a prestigious.
But I think the important point you make is that both ways there are consequences. Infosys failure to deliver has consequences, and also the attack on it has consequences, right? Sucheta, let's bring you in. We need to start taking last comments. Sucheta, Govind, and then Mohan gets the last word. Sucheta, go ahead.
Okay. So, I have serious objections to the words that they use, the anti-national, tukde-tukde, leftist, and whatever. And I come back to what I said initially, that they cannot make a difference. They do not seem to be able to make a difference between an organization and an individual. So the same set of abuse that they use to discredit individuals, they have used on an organization. And I think this government also has a problem when its ministers sit in, forums like the CII and start abusing corporates without details. I think you're taking on a corporate, you better have the guts to stand up and give details to say exactly what you object to, because you are the government, damn it. You are the government, you are the regulator. You can't stand there and make throwaway comments like the kind which Piyush Goyal has done. And this is what Panchjanya has done, it obviously sees itself like a part of government, and it has used the same narrative. That is a problem.
Yeah, Govind?
No, I think I would go along the same lines. I think companies are not individuals. Companies create value. They create jobs. They make the economy do well. And companies are of all kinds, shapes and sizes, good ones, bad ones, domestic companies, international companies. Everyone is there to add and create value, and that must be recognized. And I think if we allow this kind of commentary to go on, I mean, to me, then there is no one left. Not that I would hope that companies should be left alone or something, but I think if you go after companies in this manner and start ascribing these attributes to them,
Govind, you don't say the same thing when it comes to an Adani or Ambani, that the company is different from the individual. Then you talk of Adani and Ambani.
No, I don't talk about Adani and Ambani. So
no, I'm not talking about you as in you. You see, nobody says that's a corporate and that's not an individual.
But there has to be some basis. There has to be some basis to have a conversation about calling. No, Sandip.
If somebody is saying Nandan Nilekani has gone and got these orders from a Modi or a Jaitley, I don't think there is anything wrong in that. Then you can't say that.
But that's not what they're saying. But that's not what the article is about. The article is a broad sweep. The article is a broad sweep.
I don't care about the article. My limited point is Infosys has botched up big time, and they have to bear a price for it.
Okay, that price cannot be to be called anti-national. That price has to be within the framework of business, within the framework of contracts. Madhavan, and then Mohan has to wrap. Madhavan, quickly. Yeah.
When there was a boardroom fight in Infosys, I called Mr. Narayanan Murthy as somebody behaving like a mother-in-law. Okay, so I have no.
I mean, that's sexist, but that's different. Yeah.
It's sexist to the extent that it's a woman against a woman. Okay, so the point is.
Anyway, that's a separate conversation, but go on.
But the point is that I'm using this to say that a criticism of Infosys and its promoters are valid based on solid ground. So what is happening right now is something else where you are making anti-national tax and you're behaving like George Bush during the Iraq war, saying if you're not with us, you're with them. And there is a very atavistic, narrow and jaundiced interpretation of what nationalism is. Whereas we are talking on a day when Taliban is calling out to the resistance in Panjshir Valley saying, please come and join the nation, although we are fighting a war with you. And what is the comparison? I mean, even Taliban is allowing dissent now.
One last word. When Sandip says there has to be a price for when you botch up, that price has to be paid within the language of business contracts if there is a price, right? Your last thoughts. You said you were very angry. How do you think this is going to impact Infosys, and how do you think Infosys should react?
Well, first of all, Infosys should focus on making sure that the glitches in the portal are remedied as early as possible. They should come clean and tell all of us what is working, what is not working, how much has been filed till date, and what are they going to set it right so that confidence is restored along with the government. So their communication has been poor. They must accept responsibility. And as far as the allegations are concerned, just ignore it and get along with your life. Now, there are many people like me and all of you here who have said very clearly that this kind of language, this kind of attitude is not acceptable. I've said it's not acceptable business. All of you feel it's not acceptable for individuals, for anybody to say this. I agree with you. Fine. I mean, it's okay. So we have to stand up. And it also shows, Barkha, that citizens of this country will always stand up for what is right, to protect the rights as per the constitution. We are not scared of anybody, and we will never be scared of anybody. And we'll always speak up against anything that is wrong. You and I may differ on the language, but all of us will always speak up. That's the message.
And the next time Sucheta and I are called anti-national, Mohan, we expect support from you. That's the point of this show. All right, Sucheta, you wanting to add a line there? Sucheta, you wanting to add a line? Sorry, okay. I think she agrees with me, and I think that smile says it all. Leaving it there, right? And I think it's kind of intriguing that Infosys is choosing just not to speak. I mean, who remains silent at a time like this? It's a very peculiar thing. But we'll leave it there. We'll keep a close eye on this developing story. Mohandas, Madhavan, Narayanan, Govind, Ethiraj, Sandip, Ghose, and Sucheta, Dalal. Pleasure talking to all of you, and see you all soon. See you tomorrow to our audience, same time, same place. Thank you for watching. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo's Story and support independent, robust journalism.